There comes a quiet moment in life when you look around and realize you've spent decades giving, guiding, and loving your children with every ounce of your heart, but somehow, along the way, the respect you once received has faded. It's not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's in the way they speak over you, dismiss your thoughts, or forget to ask how you feel. If that's something you felt, silently, even painfully, please know this. You're not alone, and it's not too late to gently reclaim your place. In this video, I'll walk with you through 5 powerful yet peaceful ways to regain respect from your children without ever raising your voice. These aren't about arguments or guilt. They're about quiet strength, emotional independence, and honoring the wisdom that comes with age. Each step is rooted in real life, built from lived experience and meant to restore not just their view of you, but how you see yourself. So stay with me. And if any part of this speaks to you, feel free to share your story in the comments below. Just type, "I'm here," or tell us what part of this journey you're on. And don't forget to subscribe, because what comes next could change everything. Sometimes, the hardest part isn't that your children speak to you with less respect. It's that without realizing it, you've started adjusting yourself in hopes of earning it back. You soften your voice when you want to stand firm. You say yes when your body says no. You laugh off comments that sting a little too deeply just to keep the peace. And somewhere along the way, your needs quietly slip to the bottom of the list. It happens gradually, especially after 70, when many parents just want to hold on to the connection, to avoid conflict, and to feel like they still matter in the lives they helped shape. But here's a quiet truth many don't say aloud. The more you chase their approval, the more you teach them that your value is negotiable. And when your self-worth seems negotiable, people, yes, even your children, start to treat it that way. It's not because they don't love you. It's often because you've made your own voice so soft, so flexible, that they forget it even has weight. When you bend too often, they stop noticing you're carrying the whole emotional load. Respect in this stage of life doesn't come from sacrifice, it comes from self-respect. And self-respect, for someone who's given so much, isn't selfish. It's sacred. You've spent your life showing up for others. Now is the time to show up for yourself, not to prove anything, not to argue, but simply to stand where you are and not shrink. Because when you stop asking for a seat at the table and instead quietly take your place with dignity, the entire dynamic shifts. They see you not as someone trying to stay relevant, but as someone who is relevant, because you're grounded, clear, and not afraid to be seen fully as you are. I've met many older adults who felt invisible in their own families. They didn't yell, they didn't demand, but they slowly faded into the background, hoping that by being agreeable they'd earn love and kindness in return. What they often received instead was indifference, not because their children were cruel, but because the parents themselves had stopped standing tall. Reclaiming that space isn't about confrontation. It starts by saying, gently but firmly, "That doesn't sit right with me," or "I'd rather not do that today." Small words, simple sentences, but when spoken from a place of quiet self-respect, they carry weight. And more importantly, they restore balance. This isn't about becoming harsh or cold, it's about remembering who you are when no one else is in the room. Your worth was never meant to be measured by how much you bend. You've earned your voice over years of experience, love, sacrifice, and wisdom. Use it, not loudly but clearly, and watch what happens when you stop chasing their approval and start holding your own. They'll feel it, not as resistance but as strength, and slowly they'll begin to look at you with new eyes, eyes that remember, eyes that respect. If you've ever walked out of a conversation with your grown child and felt smaller, unheard, or even dismissed, you're not alone. And if you've stayed quiet in that moment, simply to avoid more tension, that too is something many parents do. But silence, though peaceful on the surface, can sometimes send the wrong message. It can quietly teach others that your time, your thoughts and your feelings are optional, that they can interrupt, override, or even disregard you without consequence. And the truth is, people of all ages learn how to treat us based on what we consistently allow. That's why the next step, though delicate, is deeply powerful. Setting boundaries, and more importantly, holding them. Not with anger, not with ultimatums, but with calm clarity. A boundary isn't a wall, it's a door that says, "You're welcome in, but only with respect." And that respect doesn't grow from lectures. It grows from how you carry yourself when things get uncomfortable. You don't have to raise your voice to be heard, but you do need to speak with the quiet strength of someone who knows they still matter. Sometimes that sounds like, "Please let me finish before responding." Or, "I'd prefer we talk without shouting." Small sentences, spoken softly but firm in intent. They don't start fights, they set standards. And standards, when consistent, reshape how others show up around you. Many seniors worry that if they push back, they'll damage the relationship. But in truth, unspoken frustration damages it far more. Respectful boundaries don't push people away. They draw the right kind of closeness, one where love has space to breathe without stepping on your dignity. I remember speaking with an older gentleman who told me his daughter often corrected him mid-sentence. It made him feel as though his voice didn't matter anymore. At first, he brushed it off, smiled through it, and told himself she was just stressed. But over time, he realized he was shrinking, not because she meant harm, but because he stopped showing her where the line was. One day, he calmly told her, "I've noticed I'm often interrupted. I'd really appreciate it if I could finish my thoughts." He didn't accuse, he didn't scold, but he spoke from a place of quiet self-respect. And slowly, things began to change. It's not always immediate. Sometimes when you first set a boundary, others push back harder. Not because it's wrong, but because it's new. But if you hold steady without hostility, just with grace and consistency, the resistance often fades. And what replaces it is something deeper than obedience. It's respect, not for what you demand, but for what you embody. This stage of life is not about fading into the background. It's about becoming even more rooted in who you are. And when your children see that you still honor your own space, they learn how to do the same. Not because you forced them, but because you reminded them how quietly, confidently, and with unwavering self-respect. As we grow older, one of the quietest shifts we face is the way our hearts begin to slow. We wait for the call. We wait for the visit. We wait to be remembered. And sometimes we attach so much of our peace to those moments that when they don't come, we feel forgotten, not just by our children, but by life itself. It's not that love has disappeared. It's that the balance of emotional need has changed, and too often, we've placed our sense of worth into hands that are too busy or distracted to hold it gently. But the truth is, your value does not depend on how often they check in, how warmly they speak, or how present they are. Your value was never meant to be measured by another's attention. It lives in you. It always has. Letting go of emotional dependence doesn't mean loving less. It means standing fuller in your own space. It means returning to that quiet center inside you that once guided a family, faced hardship, and built a life from strength. It means finding peace in moments you create for yourself, not ones you wait to be given. When your children sense that your joy and identity no longer hang in the balance of their actions, something shifts. You become lighter to be around. They no longer feel the unspoken pressure to fill a space they didn't realize they were occupying. And slowly they return, not out of obligation, but out of genuine connection. I once met a woman who told me she used to call her children every Sunday without fail. But when she stopped calling, the silence lasted 3 weeks. At first, it crushed her. She questioned everything. Then, instead of sitting in that pain, she did something unexpected. She picked up her knitting again, joined a local book circle, and started baking for the senior center. What happened next wasn't magic. It was natural. Her children called. Not because she chased them, but because they noticed her absence, they sensed her fullness, and they respected it. When you stop needing their attention to feel complete, they begin to offer it more freely. Emotional independence in later life is not a retreat, it's a return to self, a return to the woman or man you were before being someone's mother or father consumed everything. It's a quiet act of reclaiming your own emotional boundaries, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. And in doing so, you teach your children the most important lesson of all, that love is strongest when it's not demanded, but chosen. So if your heart feels heavy from waiting, turn gently inward. Give yourself the care you once gave so freely to others. Trust that in choosing your own joy, you're not pulling away. You're creating the space where true connection can grow again. Because respect always begins with how you hold yourself when no one else is watching. There comes a time, often quietly and without warning, when you realize that all you're giving, your time, your support, your presence, has started to feel one-sided. What once came from love now feels like expectation. What used to be appreciated now goes unnoticed. And instead of thank yous, you're met with silence, or worse, a sense of entitlement. That shift isn't just painful, it's confusing. Because as parents, giving has always been second nature. You gave when they were too young to understand, and even now you continue to offer yourself in ways that feel familiar, even comforting. But here's the truth that's hard to swallow. Giving without appreciation doesn't build closeness. It builds distance, and sometimes resentment. This is not about withholding love, it's about restoring value to your generosity. When giving becomes automatic, people stop seeing it as kindness and start seeing it as currency. Something they deserve, something you owe. And when they expect it, they no longer recognize its cost. Your energy, your time, your emotional well-being. Saying no doesn't mean you love them less. It means you're drawing a quiet line that says, my care is not a guarantee, it's a gift. And like all true gifts, it deserves recognition, no payment, not performance, just a simple human acknowledgement that your presence still matters. I once spoke with a man who told me that after helping his daughter move, again, she barely said thank you. She texted 2 words, all done. No call, no warmth, just closure. He didn't want praise, but he wanted to feel seen. The next time she asked for help, he paused. He didn't argue. He didn't guilt her. He simply said, I'll need to think about it. That was it. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was powerful. Because for the first time, he let his boundaries speak where his words no longer had weight. When you stop overextending yourself, something remarkable happens. People begin to notice what they had taken for granted. They remember that your time isn't infinite, your kindness isn't endless, and your willingness to show up isn't a given. And slowly, they start to treat it with care again. Not because you demanded it, but because you stopped giving more than was healthy for your spirit. In this season of life, your energy is precious. Every yes should come from choice, not habit. And when you do choose to give, let it come from a place of fullness, not depletion. If they do not appreciate it, that is not your failure. That is their lesson to learn. And the most respectful thing you can do for yourself and for them is to make sure that your kindness isn't costing you your peace. Because peace at this age is not a luxury, it's your right. And preserving it may just be the strongest message you ever send, not with anger, not with withdrawal, but with gentle, unshakable self-respect. And now, perhaps the most healing and powerful shift of all, one that often comes not in a single moment but gradually, like light returning to a dim room. It's the realization that your happiness, your sense of meaning and your identity can no longer revolve around your children. Not because you love them less, but because you've started to remember that you too are still becoming. For many, parents, especially after 70, life begins to feel smaller when the family grows larger and more distant. The visits slow down, the phone rings less, and in the quiet, it's easy to feel forgotten, as if your only role now is to wait for others, to fill the silence. But you weren't born to wait. You were born to live, even now, especially now. Reclaiming your life outside of them doesn't mean turning your back on family. It means turning your face toward the sun again. It's about stepping into your own space with purpose, whether through a daily walk, a new interest, a volunteering role, or simply sitting on your porch with a book that stirs your soul. These aren't distractions, they're declarations. They say, I am still here, I still matter. My story is not done. And when your children see you no longer waiting for their attention but actively creating your own joy, something shifts. You're no longer just mom or dad. You're a whole person again, complex, alive, and deserving of admiration. I remember meeting a woman who, after years of feeling like she had been put on a shelf, decided to take a watercolor. class. At first, it was just something to fill time. But by the third week, she was waking up excited. She painted her memories, her favorite landscapes, and eventually, without ever asking, her daughter asked to see her work. That small gesture meant more than any gift, because it wasn't prompted by guilt, it was born of curiosity, of admiration. Her daughter saw her not as someone waiting to be needed, but as someone who had become quietly radiant in her own right. This is what happens when you stop measuring your value through your children's involvement and start building a life you enjoy, whether they notice or not. They will notice, maybe not immediately, but in time, because people of all ages are drawn to those who are rooted in themselves, not in ego, but in essence, and there is no clearer signal of inner strength than choosing to live fully, not just exist. You deserve that, not as a reward, but as a right. So if your days have begun to feel like shadows of what they once were, take one small step outward. Try something new, rekindle something old. Join a group, plant a seed, write your story down. Don't wait to be invited into life again. Invite yourself. Because the more you live as if you still have something to give to this world, the more the world, including your children, will return with a new kind of respect. One that is not asked for, but earned simply by being who you are. Respect from your children isn't something you demand. It's something you quietly inspire through the way you carry yourself, the way you protect your peace, and the way you live with quiet strength. If they've begun to treat you as an afterthought, don't respond with anger or guilt. Instead, reclaim your emotional independence, set gentle but firm boundaries, and build a life rooted in dignity, not dependency. These shifts may not bring instant change, but over time they reshape how others see you and, more importantly, how you see yourself. Because aging with grace means living with intention, not waiting for permission. If any part of today's message spoke to your heart, I'd love to hear your story. Share your experience in the comments. What have you learned about regaining respect without raising your voice? Your voice matters here, and your wisdom could help someone else walking the same road. Until next time, walk in quiet confidence, because your worth has never expired.